You don't feel empty because you haven't achieved enough. You feel empty because achievement was never designed to last. Every time you reach a goal, your brain chemically deletes the feeling, not to punish you, but to push you forward. This is why money doesn't settle you, why love doesn't complete you, why progress feels like motion without arrival. This isn't a personal failure, it's a biological loop, and you're inside it right now.
The human brain is not an organ of achievement. It is a biological heat sink designed for a single, narrow purpose: to minimize the energy expenditure required to keep you alive until tomorrow. Every action you take, every thought, every movement, every perceived choice is preceded by a subconscious calculation of metabolic cost versus predicted reward. This calculation is not performed by yourself. It is a chemical negotiation conducted between the basal ganglia and the prefrontal cortex. The primary objective of the central nervous system is to ensure you remain in a state of homeostasis. To the brain, progress is an invasive species. It is a disruption of the energy equilibrium. When people speak of motivation, they are describing a temporary, volatile chemical surplus. It is a fluctuation in the system, similar to a volatile weather pattern. It is not a sustainable state of being. Evolution did not select for the happy, the fulfilled, or the productive. It selected for the metabolically efficient. In a biological sense, efficiency is indistinguishable from stagnation. The impulse to remain sedentary is not a flaw of character. It is a successful survival strategy that has persisted for millions of years. Consider your current posture. You are likely holding a device. Observe the slight tension in your thumb, the curve of your neck, or the weight of your torso against a chair. You will not move to correct this discomfort until the sensory irritant outweighs the metabolic cost of repositioning. This is the baseline of human behavior. The path of least resistance is the default. Anything else requires attacks on the system. If you feel stuck, you are merely witnessing the system functioning as designed. You are currently observing this information. You may experience a mild dopaminergic response to the novelty of the data. Understand that this is not progress, it is consumption. The brain frequently treats the acquisition of information about how to act as a metabolic substitute for the act itself. It is a cheaper reward with a lower energy cost. You are currently paying the brain to avoid the work you believe you are preparing for. The biological machine optimizes for the minimum viable effort. Any narrative you construct about potential or purpose is a cognitive overlay on top of an energy-saving algorithm. The machine does not care about your goals. It cares about its fuel reserves. It prefers the heat sink of the sofa to the friction of the desk. The mechanism of human intent is governed by the gap between anticipation and arrival. We must define dopamine correctly. It is not the molecule of pleasure. It is the molecule of more. It is the signal of a reward prediction error. When you perceive a possibility, a clean workspace, a finished project, a healthier physique, the brain releases an anticipatory pulse of dopamine. This pulse creates the sensation of motivation. However, this pulse is front-loaded. It occurs during the thought of the action, not the action itself. Once the mechanical work begins, the chemical incentive begins a rapid decay. This is the action-incentive paradox. We wait for the feeling of motivation to arrive before we start, but the feeling is a byproduct of the anticipation, which is at its peak only before the work begins. By the time you sit down to execute, the fuel has already begun to evaporate. The sensation of wanting to be different is merely a signal that the brain has identified a potential reward. It is not a command to move. Without a change in the sensory input, the motor output remains locked in the default state. Observe the behavior of snoozing. When the alarm sounds, the brain performs an immediate audit. It calculates the high metabolic cost of rising against the immediate, tangible reward of 5 more minutes of sleep. The long-term reward of a productive morning is an abstraction,
a low-resolution image stored in the prefrontal cortex. The brain is biologically ill-equipped to weigh abstract future states against immediate sensory data. The snooze button is a mechanical solution to a neurochemical calculation. It is the brain choosing the certainty of the present over the hypothesis of the future. We are loops of stimulus and response. Your environment provides a prompt. Your internal state provides a reaction. If you find yourself opening a new browser tab before the current one has even finished loading, you are witnessing the mechanism in its purest form. You are seeking a new prediction error to bridge the microseconds of boredom. This is not a lack of focus. It is the brain being hyper-efficient in its search for chemical spikes. You are not distracted. You are performing exactly as a reward-seeking machine should in a high-stimulus environment. The gap between your intention and your action is the space where dopamine expires. It is the cooling of the engine. Movement requires a level of friction that the chemical signal is rarely strong enough to overcome on its own. The modern environment is a high-fidelity trap designed to exploit these biological defaults. Systemic design has replaced natural friction with artificial smoothness. In a natural state, effort was the gatekeeper of reward. In the digital state, reward has been decoupled from effort entirely. Consider the infinite scroll. It is a mechanical implementation of a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. The same logic used in slot machines. You do not know when the next valuable piece of information will appear, so you continue the mechanical action of scrolling. The metabolic cost is near zero. The potential reward is infinite. Motivation is a lie in this context because the system is designed to keep you in a state of wanting without ever reaching having. If you reached a state of satisfaction, the scrolling would stop. The system requires you to remain unsatisfied but hopeful. This extends to the physical world. Your kitchen is likely organized for the exploitation of your laziness. High-calorie, low-effort foods are placed at eye level. Your smartphone is contoured to fit the natural grip of your hand, reducing the physical friction of access to nearly nothing. Every notification chime is a Pavlovian cue that triggers a slight increase in heart rate, an autonomic response. The system has hijacked your survival instincts to ensure you attend to a digital ghost. Observe your desk or the surface nearest you. You will likely see objects placed not by intent, but by the gravity of previous habits. The remote control, the snack wrapper, the uncharged device. These are not accidents. They are physical markers of a hijacked attention span. You are living in a choice architecture that was built by someone else to ensure your defaults serve their objectives, not yours. When you say you lack motivation, you are actually saying that you are losing a fight against a sophisticated multi-billion-dollar infrastructure designed to keep you exactly where you are. You are attempting to exert a weak biological signal against a high-powered industrial broadcast. The friction has been removed for consumption and increased for creation. You are currently being optimized for the benefit of the system's energy requirements, not your own. The machine responds to the most prominent cue. In a room designed for consumption, the machine will consume. To expect otherwise is to misunderstand the physics of the environment. The most common error in human self-analysis is the belief in discipline. We view discipline as a moral quality, a reservoir of grit that some individuals possess and others lack. This is a fundamental misattribution of environmental success to internal character. What we call discipline is usually just a lack of friction. The disciplined individual is often someone who has, either by luck or design, placed themselves in an environment where the path of least resistance happens to align with their goals. If a person does not have junk food in their house, they are not disciplined for not eating it. They are simply responding to the absence of a cue. If they go to the gym every morning, it is likely because the friction of not going, social pressure, pre-packed bags, proximity, has become higher than the friction of going. Willpower is a finite metabolic resource, not a personality trait. It is a function of the prefrontal cortex, and like any muscle, it fatigues.
This is known as ego depletion. If you spend your entire day resisting the urge to check your phone, suppressing frustration at a colleague, or choosing a salad over a burger, your willpower reservoir will be empty by 6 p.m. This is why most failures of character happen in the evening. You have exhausted the hardware. Notice the impulse to search for a new productivity app or a better system. This is a misattribution of the problem. You believe the tool will provide the discipline. In reality, the act of searching for the tool is just another way to avoid the metabolic cost of the actual work. You are blaming the software for a hardware limitation. You are looking for a moral solution to a structural problem. Consider the act of switching tasks. Every time you move from a deep task to a notification, you incur a switching cost. This is not just a loss of time, it is a metabolic drain on the prefrontal cortex. By the time you attempt to return to the original task, the hardware is running at a lower voltage. The man of lack of discipline you feel is actually the mechanical cooling of the processor. Grit is a narrative we construct after the fact to explain why some people succeeded in environments that were already tilted in their favor. To rely on discipline is to rely on a failing battery to power a heavy machine. The error is in thinking the battery is the machine itself. To navigate the mechanics of inaction, one must accept the constraints of the biological machine. You cannot change the way your brain calculates dopamine. You cannot eliminate the metabolic tax on effort. You can only bias the system through the manipulation of friction. This is not motivation, this is choice architecture. If you wish to perform an action, you must reduce the physical and cognitive steps required to start it to near zero. If you wish to cease an action, you must increase the friction until the metabolic cost is too high for the brain to justify. If you want to read a book, you do not try harder to want it. You place the book on your pillow and move the phone to a different room. You have not changed your character, you have changed the physics of the room. Your will is only effective when it is used to preemptively disable your future self's ability to choose the easy path. Once you are in the moment of temptation, the prefrontal cortex has already lost the battle to the basal ganglia. Observe the tab-switching behavior again. If you close every tab except the one required for your task, you have created a friction barrier. To deviate, you must now type a new URL. This is a small hurdle, but for a brain seeking the path of least resistance, it is often enough to keep the current task as the default state. We are not masters of our destiny. We are architects of our constraints. Agency is found only in the moments before the impulse begins. If you wait until you feel like it, you have already conceded to the default settings of your environment. You are a passenger in a vehicle where the steering wheel only works 5 minutes before the engine starts. The machine is fixed. Only the input variables can be adjusted. If you do not adjust the inputs, the output is mathematically certain to remain unchanged. The brain will always choose the path with the lowest metabolic tax. Your only leverage is to ensure that the path you intend to take is the one that costs the least to travel. This requires a cold assessment of your surroundings, not a warm feeling in your chest. There is no resolution to this diagnosis. There is only a shift in perspective. Acceptance of the machine does not lead to nihilism. It leads to a cold, clinical efficiency. You stop waiting for a feeling of inspiration that was never designed to stay. You stop blaming a character that is merely a collection of environmental responses. The desire for inspiration is a symptom of the problem. It is an attempt to find a shortcut through the metabolic tax. It is an attempt to make the work feel like something other than work. It will always fail because the brain eventually habituates to any stimulus. The work will always be an expense. The friction will always exist. The solution is not to find your passion. The solution is to accept that your brain prefers the sofa and to act accordingly by removing the sofa from the equation. You do not need to feel good to function. You only need to ensure that the environment makes functioning the most logical chemical choice for a lazy machine. As this video concludes, observe your immediate impulse. Your hand may already be twitching toward the scroll wheel or the screen. You may feel the phantom itch of a notification check or the urge to see what the next video offers. This is the machine seeking its next low-cost reward to bridge the gap of the coming silence. Do not judge the impulse, simply notice it. Notice the weight of the device in your hand. Notice the light of the screen reflecting on your retinas. Notice the precise microsecond when your mind decides that this information has been consumed and it is time to move to the next stimulus. That transition is the only thing that is real. Everything else is a story you tell yourself to explain why you didn't move sooner. The architecture is set. You are now responding to it.